Awesome. So we're just going to wait a little bit as people start trickling in. Okay, I think we can probably get started just so that we can try and get through as many of these questions as possible. So hi everyone, thank you so much for attending our campaign staff and political staff panel. My name is Milo Chang and I'll be moderating today's panel. We're so incredibly lucky to have our panelists Alan Chen, Rose Sturm, and Kareem Jones with us today. So before we dive into introductions from each of our panelists, I'll just start with a brief rundown of how today's panel will work. I've prepared some questions that I hope to ask each of the panelists, and then throughout the panel, if you have any questions, you can drop them in the Q&A feature, and I can unmute you closer to the end of the panel to ask our guests directly, and then we'll just end with a closing question for each of the panelists. So now let's have each of our panelists introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their experiences in the political world. So why don't we start with Alan, and then Rose, and then Kareem?
Sure. First off, just really want to say thank you, Milo, for inviting me to speak with all of you today. And got to speak with some of you earlier in the week with the API panel, and that was a lot of fun, and really appreciate all the work that you all are doing. Hi everybody, my name is Alan Chen. I am the campaign manager for Shri Preston Kulkarni, SRI, in Texas 22. He's the Democratic nominee for Congress out there, and it's one of a handful of targeted red to blue races out here across the country. Prior to this, I was out in Las Vegas working for the Cory Booker campaign as their deputy press secretary and political director. And then before that, I had been hopping around the country working on various campaigns, one in Orange County in 2018, where Milo's from, and CA39 doing as their API outreach and comms director, and then also had been started out as a field organizer with the Hillary campaign in 2016 in Ohio, and jumped across to Atlanta and Central New York, working on various congressionals as well. So super excited to talk to all of you today, and look forward to answering any questions. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rose Sturm. I am the managing director of Rosemark Productions. We are a productions company that does political events. I started my political career, and I'm a little old, guys, so be gentle with me here. Started my career in 2005. I worked for Deval Patrick, eventually Elizabeth Warren, Martha Coakley, Boston-based. Ended up with the Obama for America team in 2011, where I worked advanced with President Obama until 2013. Fell in love with Mrs. Obama and joined her team. Have been with her ever since. We finished up a very successful book tour. If you guys ever heard of Becoming, we did that, and that was amazing. And currently, I also worked on Hillary in 16, helping her out doing advance as well. And currently, I am running my company and doing productions. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kareem, he, him, his. I am currently the Director of Data for Community Outreach Group. Before that, I took a break and worked in basically government consulting. Before that, I worked with Planned Parenthood doing data analytics training and support for every affiliate in the nation. And before that, I worked with the Hillary campaign in Ohio in 2016. And I kind of got my start doing a lot of local, basically grassroots campaign, knocking on doors, talking to people who look like me, because that's usually how you get kind of hired to start this kind of work.
Awesome. So now that each of you have like talked about a bit about like what you've done in the past, why don't we talk a little bit about like what drove you, like what made you get involved in politics, and what keeps you like motivated and involved in spite of like all the cynicism that seems to permeate like our political institutions. For this one, why don't we go Kareem and then Alan and Rose next?
Yeah, I think when I started, I think I kind of alluded that I started working, like basically doing what a lot of Black people who start this work do, is basically talking to other Black people. And then I kind of like got very interested in like the data piece of like how we chose who we spoke to. And I got very kind of interested in that and started to kind of fall down a rabbit hole, learning as much as I can about the van, and then learning about everything behind the van, and kind of got a role where I got to teach all of that work to other folks. And I think for me, I think you like alluded to all of the cynicism, but a lot of the work I get to do is a lot of like the empowerment of people. So I work with something called, I'm on the board of something called the data generation, where we teach kind of those kind of then all of the skills that I feel like anyone could use on a campaign to anybody who would like it for free right now. And it's basically, I say like that kind of guards me against cynicism, because I see a lot of people who think about a lot of things you do, especially when you think about political data and the Nate Silvers and all the folks, is like magic happening in the background. And when they get to see that they too can do some of this, and they too can then take a lot of it and then help their communities, that very much protects me against like that kind of like, are we really making change like in the world?
Yeah. So I'll pick up a little bit what Kareem was talking about in the sense of empowerment, right? I will say that there are definitely plenty of lows in this line of work. I've definitely found myself staring at a wall or staring at a ceiling at times, just being like, why am I doing this? Why am I creating content that seems to be pushing America to the further extremes of either political end in order to get my party to win, or in order to get my candidate to win? I'm like, am I actually helping society, or am I causing the problems? And like, those are going to be continual questions that you will always have. I think it's important to always be asking yourself those questions. If you're not, then you've really truly lost yourself. Then you become one of those soulless political consultants that will do whatever it takes to win. And we don't need more of those. We absolutely don't need more of those. But going back to empowerment, right? That's really what fuels me in this work. That's what pushes me through any sort of cynicism and pessimism that exists in this world. Whenever I talk to a voter that says like, I don't want to vote, like the political system is broken, I think back to the time that I spent an hour and a half driving a Taiwanese grandmother who was like 90 years old to go vote for the first time in a decade since she like first became a citizen. And like, I remember just talking to her for about an hour and a half, just being like, why are you voting this time around? And she would talk to me about like what matters, why her she's voting because she's afraid of her grandkids' futures. And this was back in 2018. And, just walking her to the polling booth, having to actually like stand next to her as she was casting her vote, because they didn't have any Chinese access material there. And like, I had to kind of like translate what the vote, like what the ballot was into Chinese for her. And just really walking that process with her step by step. And it was grueling. It took an hour and a half to get one vote. But then after I dropped her off, she was just like, thank you. Like, nobody's ever done that. Nobody ever has taken the time to help me like exercise my democratic right as a US citizen. And you're like, all right, I got somebody to vote. I helped somebody who wanted to vote but never really had the ability or like the resources to vote because there were so many barriers of entry. And that just put a smile on my face for the rest of that night, even though we were like early returns showed them my candidate was like down. Eventually he won, but like at that night we had like a somber tone in the campaign party. But like I just kept thinking about that Taiwanese grandmother, and I was like, no matter what happens, at the end of the day, I did some tangible good, and that's all that really matters at it.
So I think for me, and I loved all the pieces here for campaigning, because I think there's so many moving parts in a campaign and so many important aspects in a campaign. My inspiration came when I first heard Deval Patrick speak when he won the Democratic nomination in Boston, when he was never supposed to be the winner as a African-American man running in a very predominantly white state. But what had me to the floor and awed was actually how good I could hear him and how perfect his background was and how the messaging aspect was so important. So it's great to hear from both Kareem and Alan about, data and what I think of empowerment with field, but also so now my vision and want for my candidate to look good also is important, because that also helps him or her get that vote. So although I'm not, crunching numbers over here or bringing folks to the polls, as a team, when we all three of us kind of collaborate, and I can make that person think, oh, that event I went to, the way he spoke, something about that event, that's that staffer behind the scene. And so I think that empowered me and motivated me to go into the events aspect and advance part of it. So
Awesome. So like historically, like the political figures who like dominated our nation's leadership have been affluent white men, and none of you really fit into this mold. So I sort of wanted to ask, like, in the political world, do you think it's easy to feel like a sense of imposter syndrome? And like, if so, how do you deal with that? And sort of like to tack a follow-up to that, just like, how important do you think experience in politics is versus like genuine passion? So for this one, I'm going to ask Kareem first, and then Alan and Rose.
Yeah, I mean, so I work in like data analytics. And I feel like one of my first job, I remember I entered the room and I was like the only Black person there. And it's basically like you're doing like political work at a nonprofit, but then you're also on like a team, like the team of people who are supposed to be like the smart ones doing all the number crunching. And you look around and you're like, I'm like, why I'm not supposed to be here. And that took a lot of like mental work to get over. I remember, I don't know, but when you apply for a data job, they send you a test. So they send you some Excel sheets or some numbers, like a CSV, and they're like, tell me something about this. And I remember when I was like in like the last one in the interview, I was like, got on the Zoom call, I looked about it, I was just like all of these like white people looking at me and like going through my test. Going through my test and like this and that, and why did I choose to do this and why did I choose to do that? And I think for me, anytime I felt like I didn't belong here, I had to like tell myself like, no, like I did the work. Like I like did the like actual like work to like prove that I have the skills to be here. And I remember I don't know if you all know, they're called Repower now, but I went to one of the old, like the Wellstone boot camps, and I did the whole thing, and then at the end of it, you have to turn in an evaluation. And the trainer who like she's very brilliant. She like worked on like the Obama campaign. She ran data for Bernie, and she was like, "You belong at the shop that you are. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Like, you belong at the shop that you are, because like the work was really, really good. And I think you're never gonna get over it. And you just have to somebody just center yourself and be like, I got here. And someone's had to think about I had to jump through an exponential amount of hurdles to get here. And so I have not just the knowledge, but just more grit to be able to be in this room. That's kind of the internal thing that I tell myself every time I feel creeping up. And that's how I kind of I just you never really get over it. I've talked to some impressive people of color in the space, and I've asked them the same question, and they always say it's a constant work that you have to get to yourself and just remember that. But I just tell people that wherever you at, whatever room you're in, you're the only person there. Just remember that you belong there. That's and I tell myself that too.
Yeah, I mean, really going on that, Kareem, I'm in the same boat. Even right now as a campaign manager, I'm not gonna name the caucus, but I was in a campaign manager meet and greet with campaign managers and chief of staffs. Out of 30 people, I was the only person of color in that entire Zoom. I was like, well, this is fun. Yeah, let's talk about police accountability and criminal justice reform and immigration reform. Yeah, we could definitely I'll definitely listen to all you give your valuable perspectives on this. There's a lot to learn from all of you. But in all seriousness, there is actually a lot to learn from them in the sense that a lot of these people have the best of intentions, but then they don't really necessarily know how to express those. So when they're talking about things and they say things incorrectly, it's exhausting that you have to always have these corrective conversations. Just being, no, you shouldn't use that one term that. That term's actually signaling it as a microaggression, and then it actually really detracts from the point. And then you say all those things with these people, and sometimes at the end of the day, again, you stare at the ceiling and you're like, am I really making any progress here? Or is this just, or am I just yelling at a wall? And then, occasionally you meet that one individual that really does take it to heart. And then you're like, okay, I just did what in the Democratic Party we strive to live for, which is build coalitions, right? And it's just building coalitions is so freaking hard. All right, holding together coalitions is so hard. It is so easy to tear apart each other and just say that oh, you don't understand my perspective and therefore your opinion is invalid. It's just so easy to do that, especially in these days when we're able to find our own communities very quickly. And it's just we live in a world where it's so easy to do that, but it's so hard to create any substantive change if we resort to those lines. So when we go into imposter syndrome, right? No, I had it when I first started as a campaign manager, and then I realized that none of these people really actually have the perspective that I'm able to provide that's very unique. So they in fact are the imposters. So it's just turning it around, just be hey, the future of the Democratic Party, the future of America is diverse. It looks like everybody on this panel, it looks like probably the folks that are in the audience, your perspective is so valuable. It's what the future of the country really is. And anybody that's telling you otherwise just doesn't get it. And unfortunately, they hold they're gatekeepers and they hold so many positions of power right now, but that you're going to have those really annoying conversations of being no, you actually do need to invest in AFAM outreach. No, you do need to invest in Latino outreach and stuff like that. And really trying to walk through it with them. But, eventually, hopefully your generation, we don't have to do that anymore because you all will get it and you all will be running things.
I just love the different generations here and getting the feedback. It's amazing because I feel like an old lady here, but I want to start off, I just want to start off by saying, for me, as a woman of color, I never go into a situation, and hopefully other people of color and women on this panel, whether you're a woman of color or just a woman, but you may understand this, we usually don't tend to go into a situation we're great. We tend to walk in and we look around and we say, okay, let me not talk too much and let me not get too much attention on me, I just want to kind of squeeze by, so I never really had that syndrome where like, I need to showcase who I am, because I was always there to learn and to figure out how to fit in. And so my generation of people, we didn't speak up. We just tried to get along, and to get along, to be a part of. So fast forward, grown up a little bit since my earlier years. During the campaign with President Obama, I worked my way up from literally sweeping floors to managing 15,000 people in a crowd. And then once I got into Mrs. Obama's world, I became a team overall lead. I mean, that was a lot of jumping through hoops, a lot of questioning myself and whether I belonged or didn't belong, or how smart I was compared to the other kids. And I call them kids because at that time I probably was in my early 30s and everyone was like 21 and everyone knew everything. And so it was hard. It was hard. It was already the layer of being a female and being a woman of color and always being the only one in the room. So many times I faced the, who's in charge here? Sir, I am. And it's like, oh no, seriously, go to one of my subordinates and ask them questions. But I learned to be humble. I think that is a key in whatever we as women and people of color do, is humility. We learn to be humble, and we learn how to talk to people, and we learn how to voice our opinion when it's needed. And I had no experience when I started in 2005. I had a lot of passion. And I think in politics, if you don't have passion, then you're kind of heartless, right? You're just kind of soulless. So it's so important, especially if you're a minority in any aspect, that you have passion for who you're working with, for the people you work alongside, and that you're treated with respect. So I think all of those keys are important. And so being the only woman and person of color in a room of generals and Secret Service agents and counter assault teams, and telling them what I need them to do for President Obama or Mrs. Obama, it became an empowering thing. It became a position of, I don't need to be loud or extra, because I actually am good enough to be here. And I think we all definitely need to, at some point, look in the mirror and say, hey, guess what? I'm good enough. I'm not what people perceive people that look like me are, but I am actually good enough to be here. And I think that's important.
Awesome. So our next question is, so looking at like media coverage, it's really easy to sort of think of campaigns as like just a candidate, and to like forget about all the staffers like behind the scenes who like plan out every event, who are like knocking on doors and talking to voters. Or do you think we would benefit from seeing politics as being driven less by like the personalities of elected officials and more by like the staff that's behind them supporting them? So like Rose, I know you worked advanced, so I was hoping that you could go first, and then we could go to Alan and then Kareem.
I love this question. I think like every team has a leader, right? And every country needs a leader, and every, even class presidents are leaders of their class bodies, right? So I truly believe that I embody my leader. So when I do her events, they are a representation of me, and I am a representation of her, just as she is a representation of me. And what her actions are a representation of me. So I do feel it is important that we are acknowledged as staffers, that we know what we're there for. And it's important that, people do respect us, but at the same token, our job is to elect a leader who's not only going to lead us as staff, but the nation. So we are kind of selfless in that, where it's not about, hey, look at me. I know talking, if anyone has ever experienced Advance, you're like, girl, bye, because you guys are all about the lights and the glamour. But it's not about that. It's about making your principal look the best and do the best and be in the best place mentally to convey their message to millions of people at any given time. So I think as a staffer for, oh my God, 15 years now, for various people, it's more of my role to promote my leader. And my leader can then promote me in what they do and what they say. So that's how I feel about that.
I think Rose really summed it up quite nicely in the sense that like we work for leaders that really represent our values, right? Like the only reason I am in the position I am in is because my candidate, Shri Preston Kulkarni, was made it a very high priority to have somebody that was a person of color manning his campaign. And that's how we were building out the rest of our team as well, right? Like we brought, like our organizing director is Latina, our communications director is a white man, but you know, we're making progress. And then, but like the rest of the staff is all predominantly people of color because this is a majority minority district. At the same time, we also recognize that like we're making progress. This is always going to be a gradual thing in terms of increasing diversity within campaign staff. But again, going back to the idea of just like staff representing the values of candidates and whether or not candidate, like we're focusing too much on candidate personality. I think it's the opposite. I think like Shri, for example, is a diplomat. And he comes at politics from a diplomat's perspective of just like, you should be able to negotiate things. You shouldn't be drawing so many ideological lines in the sand that prevent conversations from even happening. And that is something that I truly believe in as an individual as well. And I think that like the fact that his personality is what led him, his personality and background is what led him to develop this diplomat mindset of trying to negotiate in good faith with people that have even tried to kill him in the past. That is something that is incredibly important to me, and it's something that's not a policy specific point. It's just who he is as a person, and it's those type of people that I think we need more of in government. The policies are there. They all sit on the bookshelves of like Center for American Progress. It's just a matter of like trying to find people that are going to actually implement them. It's just a lot of gritty work in the halls of Congress that really you need good personalities to really get through.
So this is an interesting question as I think about it. So I would say that how I would approach this question, or how I would like change it, is that like who someone chooses to work for is representative of their leader. And so if you like think about like when I think about going to work for a candidate, it is like I am doing like, hey, does this person represent my values? Do I like am I going to like, because when you do campaign work, it's like tiring, you're exhausted, like everyone has like a breakdown sometime like somewhere along the line, like everyone has a breakdown, and it's like, who do I choose to give that energy to? And so when you like look at the person's campaign staff, it's kind of the reverse, is that like those like that person had to be intentional about hiring like people of color, but like those people had to be intentional about like working for that person. Because the better you are, the more options you have to like go someplace to go work. And if I don't believe in that person's values, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna leave like a whatever job I have, or like risk how long I'm gonna be like giving my time and energy to that person to like go support that. And like case in point, there are many people like campaign staff that I had talk about like Bloomberg. And if you knew Bloomberg was paying more money than God. All right, like for like positions, like let's be honest, like Bloomberg was paying a lot of money for positions, which was like great, like everyone needs to be paid their worth. But then a lot of people made a value judgment of like, does Bloomberg represent my values, and how much is that worth? And that was and a lot of campaign staff like made that value decision outside of the money. And so I think when you like look at their staff, that's like those people chose to go there. And that's how I think it should be reflected.
Awesome. So like, I know in politics, there's probably also people who are sort of there just to build like their own like resumes and like their own power. So have you ever encountered like individuals who you could tell like only cared about their own careers and like not about the candidate they were working for or like the constituents? And like, if so, what do you wish you could like say to them? For this one, why don't we go Alan, Rose, Kareem?
Yeah, I encounter them every day. I have resumes that are sent to me every single day from individuals like this. Look, I think there's like this African village proverb that's just if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. Look, like you can be out for yourself initially, and like you can become a field organizer. You can rise relatively quickly by stabbing people in the back and really being out for yourself, but you will hit a wall. You will hit a ceiling that like eventually you're going to be recognized. Like your reputation in this in the political sphere is basically everything, and word gets around. This really isn't that big of a world, even though we like say it, even though it might seem like it. I'm like relatively certain that like I could prior to this panel and getting to meet Rose, I could probably get Rose's phone number in like 2 phone calls if I really needed to. And it's just like, it's a small world. We find hidden references all the time. I don't ask for your listed references mostly. I just kind of like try and figure out where you worked and then try and figure out somebody that I know that worked on that team and just like, hey, so how do you really feel about this person? Because like, again, like it's a lot of this work is really a lot of people are able to do good work here on these campaigns. What's hard is being able to do great work together and having personalities that mesh together. And that's the number one priority that I have whenever I'm hiring staff is just like, how are you going to fit into this team? We can train you. But what I need to know is that that's like, you're going to fit well into this team and that we're going to go far together. And the only way that I'm going to be able to know that is just like, if you're in this for the right reasons, if you're not here to just further your own self-ambitions, but know that you're fighting for a greater cause.
Totally love that. I think you just nailed that on the head, Alan. That was awesome. For me, it's exactly what he just said. You got to have passion. You got to be genuine about this. My real role into presidential advance was me giving out sandwiches on a train. Literally, Elizabeth Warren was taking a train through Massachusetts, thinking about running for Senate back in 2011. And a gentleman came up to me and said, hey, can you do some advanced stuff for us? I was like, of course. You know, I wasn't thinking about payment. I wasn't thinking about, I wanted that opportunity to feel empowered helping on this advanced trip. And one of my job duties was passing out sandwiches. And my exact talking points to everyone, ma'am or sir, ham or cheese with on whole wheat? Do you want water or soda? And I did it with a smile. I did it with passion. And literally, I would say, and I did it unknowing anyone was looking. And literally, maybe an hour later, he goes, you should work for President Obama. And I said, yeah, and you're funny. And 24 hours later, hi, this is the White House. Can we get you on a flight to do an advanced trip for us? That's how my story unfolded. Passion, being genuine, and literally, people can read right through you. If you're walking up to somebody, hi, you know, bumping other people or just not being a team player, I can say this now because I can say I'm in a senior role now. I see that and I don't like it because it's not how I know I started and how I know people who don't have the means to do that start. We start humbly, we start hardworking, and I know I can count on that person to be awake until 1 a.m. and to wake up again at 4 a.m. and not complain. And even in my own role, dealing with kind of like what I think of celebrities now. When you think about Hillary and you think about Mrs. Obama and President Obama, as soon as I see anyone on day one kind of like not doing their work and being clutchy or anything like that, total turn off. So just think in mind, I'm not telling you to go out there and, let me pretend not to be this person. You are who you are at the end of the day. But when people like me in senior roles look for people to promote, look for people to trust, we look for those hard workers with their head down. What can I do? How do I execute? Because that tells me you're not about yourself, you're not about me, but you're about this candidate and their messaging. And that means the world. Take it from me, guys. So head down, work hard, do what you got to do. And if I could tell anybody who messed up in my eyes, which there has been quite a few, usually it's one trip with me and then I'm done with you. I would say, do you regret that? Are you sorry? And maybe I should give you another chance if you can prove me that you can do better, but I wish you didn't do that because you probably messed up a really good opportunity, especially with someone like myself, a person of color, a woman who looks to uplift other people who don't have the opportunities I know that a lot of white males that have a lot of money do. So just think about that when you're out there, especially to this group coming up. Take the time, work hard, think about what you're doing and how you're doing it. And there are eyes always watching you. So just remember that. So that's my message.
I think I would echo what both of them said. The community is small. It doesn't feel small, but once you get working in it, I remember I was at a happy hour with someone and I was having drinks with them and they were like the data director for some place. And I was like, oh yeah, I was working on this team. And I was like, who do you work with? And they knew everyone I worked with and their response was like, yeah, you either one time in your life interviewed with X person or worked for X person. And I think I had when I worked for Planned Parenthood, someone saw me in my Planned Parenthood sweater or something and came out to me. He's like, oh, tell so-and-so I said hi. And I was like, who are you? How do I know you? And they were like, oh yeah, I worked with so-and-so. And so it's the higher up you get also, the smaller it is and the more people know. And so I always tell people when you go work in a place, the most valuable things that you would leave with is the connections that you make and the reputation that you left behind. And there comes a point where people will call you and ask you what do you think of so-and-so? Because I remember, did you work for so-and-so? Or hey, I have X job. Who would you recommend? All right. And there's I was my current job, I didn't apply. I literally got a call in the afternoon and someone was like, hey, what are you doing? Do you want this job? Do you know someone? So it's I think if you're only in it for yourself, and that will eventually get around. That will eventually get around and people will know because how we hire, to be honest with you, is by word of mouth mostly. It is mostly it is a lot of people don't have time to go through a whole bunch of resumes. It is usually by, I know I've gotten jobs where a whole bunch of people knew had the job before I did. The first day I got hired, I got hey, welcome on the team. I was like, wait, how did you know I was coming here? And I was like, so-and-so already called me and told me they were thinking of hiring you and asked me about you, how you did while you were on my team. And so I would that's just how it is. And so just remember that the connections that you make are going to be the most valuable thing that will take you the furthest.
So I want to make sure we have enough time for the closing. So just really quickly, someone in the audience wanted to know would you consider running for office yourself? And if not, why not? So why don't we just we can go Rose, Alan, and then Kareem.
I'm going to admit, I have had that thought many, many a times in life. And it is, I think, one of the most powerful positions to help people and to send a message. And in my years of being around politicians, I've learned to hear my own voice and see the struggles of people and be obviously outraged and, and find my own, like I said, my own voice as a woman of color. And I also have seen what the poor politicians go through. And so the calling has to be deep, and it has to be for you. And I think the question is important because, and I'm going to be brief, but you can also make a difference not being on that podium. You can also elevate your person to do well based on field or data or press or crowd or whatever it is you're passionate about. You can excel and you can do well and you can campaign management. You're the puppet master. Like, you make things happen. You can create an environment where people are nasty and racist and hateful, or you can create an environment where people know that the campaign manager will not put up with any bigotry, will only allow positive vibes. And I'm passionate about this because I think it's not only the candidate, but it's the staffers and the atmosphere we create. So would I run for office? No, I wouldn't. Would I continue my job at elevating people that have that within them to run? Absolutely. Would I do things like this to speak out to young people, encourage them? Heck yeah, because I think we are going to be staffers and we are going to be leaders. So, and it's also very important. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I think Rose really got it, but like it really okay. So when you do this, even for just like 2 cycles or so, right? You'll quickly realize that there are a lot of people in office that you're questioning how they got into office, and you're like, oh, I could probably do a better job. And then you kind of realize all the crap they have to go through every single day in order to get elected. And you're like, do I really want that in my life? Sure, I've considered running for office. Do I want my entire life put under a microscope? Do I want my life scheduled down to the minute? Do I want to be spending the most of my time fundraising money? No, I don't. I'd much rather tell somebody to do that for me, and then like I get to do the strategical stuff in the back end. You find your place is basically what I'd say. But like, sure, approach it with an open mind. If you are one of those people that do want to be the face, go for it. I'm more than happy to help connect you with some resources on learning how to run. Young people also we need more young people in office, in school boards, in local office. If you want to do that, I have resources. I have people that are looking to put up those candidates. Let's get it. Like, we'll find a spot for you.
So, short answer, no. I think it's very interesting that all of us are like, no. But I think kind of the deal about like finding your calling. I think one of my old mentors, when I made a slight career change into government contracting, was like, you are going to be back because like that's not you, and you're like a teacher and you like to help people. And less than a year later, I'm back. And so it is very much about like finding your calling, and there takes so much skill sets to like run a campaign that like if you like find something like I'm not good at comms, like don't ask me about comms, like I just listen to what the people say, but like I like numbers. I like kind of like I like data, and that was my calling, and I found a place with it. So I would say, just like everyone else, like you don't have to be the person at the podium. If you have that, if that's what you want to do, go for it. But there are so many other ways that you can like make a change. You just have to find the right one for you.
So we only have like 1 minute left. So I was just wondering, like, if there's like sort of one sentence to like advice that you would like to give our members. Could we go like Rose, Alan, and then Kareem?
Failure is success. Don't be afraid to fail. because it will only lead to your success. Don't let failure stop you.
Attack every task with 100% effort. It might not, like Rose was saying, passing out sandwiches with a smile will get you far. No task is beneath you. I take out the trash. I clean our bathrooms. That's what campaign is.
+2 on what both of them said, and I would say, like, apply for the job with the confidence of a mediocre white man.
Well, thank you all so much for taking time out of your schedules to speak with us today. I'm sure that our members have gained some like really valuable insights from your experiences and perspectives. I know I have. So before we wrap up this panel, I just want to give a special shout out to Nina because she's been like typing captions behind the scenes like throughout this panel. So our next event is our mentor series where like our summit attendees will be able to learn from the experiences of like some of our mentors. So thank you all for joining us and I hope you all enjoy the rest of summit.
Take care, everyone.